What's up, guys? My name is James Blissett. I'm a professional gambler and founder of Lucrative MMA, which is my handicapping service where I help people make money from betting on MMA. Today, I'm back again for another main event breakdown video. This time, we're going to be speaking about Ricky Simón versus Yadong Song, which is the upcoming main event for the UFC card this weekend. I believe it's UFC Vegas 72. I'm not 100% sure on that. Ever since they've been chopping and changing between going from Vegas throughout the pandemic era to Miami every now and then, to London every now and then, to the pay-per-views. Honestly, I'm getting confused with all the numbers, but I think it's UFC Vegas 72. It was 71 last week. I think we're in Vegas this week. It's going to be a great fight, man. I'm super, super pumped for this main event. Probably more pumped for this main event than I was for the last main event. That might be a little bit of a hipster take. You know, I know a lot of people were looking forward to the Curtis Blades and Pavlovich fight. So was I, but there's something about the bantamweight division. I think it's the best division in all of MMA, in all organizations. You know, we just saw Patchy Mick, shout out to him, get a vicious first round knockout over Ruffian Stotson. People, you know, in the bantamweight division over in Bellator, and people are talking about Patchy Mick being the best bantamweight fighter. So there's just something special about the bantamweight division, you know, and we got two tough top 10 guys facing off this weekend in the UFC. Ricky Simón and Yadong Song. I'm not going to say this is a classic striker versus grappler matchup, but this is kind of a classic striker versus grappler matchup, right? We've got Ricky Simón on one side, who's a dominant MMA grappler, dominant MMA wrestler. The guy pushes a crazy pace. His pressure is second to none, and the guy could shoot 50 takedowns in a 5-round fight. You know, I firmly believe he could do that, and he may have to do that this weekend against Yadong Song. It is a 5-rounder. It was rescheduled because the fight was supposed to be last week or the week before. It was within the last 14 days the fight was meant to be. And I'm not exactly sure why, but the fight got scrapped and moved to this date. I think they was chopping and changing between some other fights, and it happened to move to the main event. So instead of a 3-round fight, which is what these guys have been preparing for, now it's a 5-round fight. And like I said, Ricky Simón is probably going to attempt 30, 40 takedowns in this fight. You know, I definitely could see that being the case. And on the other hand, we got Yadong Song, who is basically a striker. And not only that, he's basically a boxer. But I don't want to just say that because it kind of limits the view on him, right? Like, he is a great MMA fighter. Although he's primarily a boxer, the way he sets up his boxing, his movement, his range control, his defensive grappling, all of these MMA aspects of his game really, really complement his boxing game. So although you may only see him landing punches, there's other things that you don't see him doing, like controlling range in an MMA fight. Because it's different when you control in range in a boxing fight and an MMA fight, right? You can be a great boxer, but if you step into the octagon, you might not be able to control that range the same, and you're going to get taken down, or you're going to get kicked. Your leg's going to get kicked apart. Yadong Song does a really, really good job in managing that range, managing the pace and pressure of the fight, so he can land his boxing. And his boxing is clean. He's got uppercuts, hooks, straights. We've seen him knock guys out with hooks, and we've seen him knock guys out with straights, and we've seen him knock guys out with uppercuts, all in the UFC. It's a great fight, and I can't get into it. Since I've already spoke about Yadong Song a little bit, let's just carry on him, right? So Yadong Song, I think they got him listed at about 25 years old or something like that. You know, he's a young dude, but there's kind of like a run-in, I don't know if you want to call it a joke or some piece of knowledge among MMA fight fans, gamblers, analysts, that Yadong Song probably isn't the age that he's listed by the UFC. You know, he may be a couple of years older, but at the end of the day, I don't have the dude's birth certificate, so I'm not really going to get into it that much. But he's listed at about 25 years old. He's a beast either way, you know, whatever age he is. If he's 50 years of age, if he's 10 years of age, it doesn't really matter. He's a beast. He's going to come forward, and as I said, he's got great boxing and great fundamentals in general, you know, just for MMA. He's very aware, acutely aware of distance, you know. He does take some shots, but I believe that's not because his distance control and his range control is lacking in any way. I believe that when he takes these shots, it's just because of the way he likes to fight. So the way he likes to fight is, as I've said, pushing the pace. He always takes the center of the octagon. You know, I've rarely seen him not take the center of the octagon. I honestly can't think of a fight where he hasn't taken the center of the octagon at least half of the fight. Even a fight against Marlon Vera, he was taking the center of the octagon in a lot of that fight. I remember he had Marlon against the cage a couple times, unloading shots. I mean, the guy walks forward, and that's why he takes the shots, because he just walks forward with reckless abandon, puts a lot of pace and pressure on his opponents. And if you do that, you are going to eat a couple of shots. Not only does he eat a couple of shots because, he just puts pressure and pace on his opponents, but I also believe that he doesn't mind eating a couple of shots because he knows he has an iron chin. Fighters get away with this their entire career until the chin starts to fall. People call these type of fighters chin bullies or something like this, right? A lot of people have called Max Holloway a chin bully. And I mean, it's a silly thing to say, You've got all these bully terminologies in MMA like chin bully, size bully. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone has different attributes, right? Was Khabib a strength bully? Is Marab a cardio bully? I mean, everyone has specific attributes that they want to use to technically bully their fighters, right? So it's kind of a silly term, but what I'm saying is Yadong Song has an amazing chin, right? So he's the type of fighter that he doesn't mind taking one or two shots because he knows he's going to land one or two on you, and he can probably take your shots, but you probably can't take his shots. His fight against Marlon Vera was a treat to watch because both of the fighters have a similar style. It's put the pace on, put the pressure on, walk forward, and be chin bullies, right? Take a shot and land a shot, and they know their shot's going to land harder. So when these two fighters stepped to the octagon against each other, it was really interesting to see how their styles clashed with one another. Both of them had good moments in the fight. There was a few times where Marlon Vera had the upper hand, and there was a few times where Yadong Song had the upper hand. It's funny because if you look over Yadong Song's record, you don't see that many KOs in the UFC. He's been to a decision many, many times. But I don't think that's indicative of the power he has. As I said, he's a bantamweight that hits like a lightweight. He hits like a big featherweight. And you wouldn't know that if you just wiki capped it or Tapology capped it, if you just looked at his record. But I think the reason for that is because, the reason he hasn't got that many knockouts in the UFC, and by the way, he's got 3. That's a decent amount, especially considering the fighters he's been fighting. But I think the reason that he hasn't got more is just because of the fighters he's been fighting. So it's very hard to knock out a guy like Marlon Vera. The dude's never been knocked out. I mean, who's going to knock Marlon Vera out? It's not easy to do that. Corey Sandhagen. I mean, has Corey ever been knocked out? Actually, I don't think he has been. So there's 2 fighters there, very high level fighters, top 5 fighters, top 10 fighters in the bantamweight division who have both never been knocked out. Yadong Song fought both of them. He beat one, and honestly, he almost beat another. In my opinion, he was potentially on his way to beating Corey Sandhagen. It was 2-2, and the fight got called off because of a cut. It was a little bit lucky for Corey Sandhagen, right? I'm going to state facts here. So it's very hard to knock those guys out. We see when he fights somebody who maybe isn't as durable as a Corey Sandhagen or as a Marlon Vera or even as a Cody Stamann, he gets knockouts. Alejandro Perez, brutal knockout. Marlon Moraes, one uppercut, the fight was over within 120 seconds. Julio Arce, he's a durable guy. Julio Arce, he may get dropped a couple of times, but he's fairly durable. Yadong Song ended the fight in the second round there. So I think Yadong Song has a lot of power. I think maybe we haven't seen it as much as we would have liked to in the UFC, but that's literally because he's been fighting the best of the best. Or at least, if they're not the best of the best, they're still very durable guys. The thing about Yadong Song is that he lacks in the wrestling, in my opinion. He can be taken down, and I do think that he's going to have some trouble with that in this fight because Ricky Simón, as I've said, is an absolute marauder with the grappling. The dude is going to come forward. He's going to throw heavy hooks in the boxing. He likes to hit the body. He likes to throw hooks up top. But he's really only doing that to crash distance and get his hands around you. Once he gets his hands around you, you're not going anywhere. It's very hard to break the grip of Ricky Simón. We saw Montel Jackson, who, as we know, he's a very strong guy himself, very strong guy for the bantamweight division, has massive hands, has good grip strength himself. He couldn't really break the grip of Ricky Simón. Anytime Ricky Simón got his hands around him, he went for a ride or he just grinded him up against the cage. Ricky Simón has done this to many, many, many opponents. He did it to Jack Shaw last time out. It was a fairly close fight. The first round, Ricky Simón, in my opinion, he edged it. But Jack Shaw did have some moments on the feet. And the second round, obviously, Ricky Simón caught him with a good shot and ended up finishing him. But even throughout that fight, all of Ricky Simón's good moments, apart from when he finished him, the finishing sequence when he hurt him and jumped on him, all of his good moments were just because he was wrapped around Jack Shaw. You know, he had that good takedown in the second round. But other than that, he couldn't take Jack Shaw down. It wasn't necessarily the wrestling. It was just more the strength with the cage push. The MMA strength in the grappling, in the clinch. You know, he's so strong. And Yadong Song's going to have a hard time keeping Ricky Simón off him in this fight. Ricky Simón is going to be shooting for his life in this fight. And not in a bad way, like he can't stand on the feet so he shoots for his life. What I mean is just constantly shooting. He is relentless with the takedowns, you know. From his very first fight under the UFC banner, it was a Dana White's Contender Series fight. The dude shot 40, not shot, sorry. The dude landed 14 takedowns. That is an abnormal stat, you know. Someone who can land, not shoot, but land 14 takedowns is a force to be reckoned with. He shot 19 takedowns and landed 14. The dude is a monster. He does the exact same thing in every single one of his fights. And he has done the exact same thing in every single one of his fights, apart from maybe when he knocked out Rafael Sunsao within about 30 seconds, because he didn't need to shoot takedowns. The dude is just going to constantly grapple you, man. And the way I see this fight playing out is fairly easy to predict. Ricky Simón's going to be shooting for takedowns. He's going to be crashing the pocket, but he has to be very, very careful when he does it, because Yadong Song has very, very good counter-striking and also very, very good pocket boxing. So I do think that just how Ricky Simón timed Jack Shaw in his last fight, where he caught him with a right cross and he knocked him out practically with that. You know, he dropped him and then he jumped on a arm triangle. Just like Ricky Simón timed Jack Shaw in that fight, I think Yadong Song's going to be trying to time him in this fight. But it's not easy to time someone who can keep up an hellacious pace. You know, we've seen in all of Ricky Simón's fights practically, and all of Merab Dvalishvili's fights, it's very hard to time somebody coming in when they're just not letting you get in your rhythm, because they keep disrupting your rhythm with takedowns, with big shots, with unorthodox looping overhands, kicks, things that you haven't seen before. And this is exactly what Ricky Simón will do. You know, he's going to disrupt Yadong Song's rhythm. So I don't think Song's going to be able to get into a rhythm. So it's going to be very hard for him to land a shot if he's not in his rhythm. You know, he's going to have to be making reads on the fly and timing a takedown entry of Ricky Simón, or the way he moves his head to one side if he throws a strike. You know, things like this. I do think that Yadong Song is going to have to make reads on the fly to catch Ricky Simón in this fight. But that's not to say he can't catch him. You know, Yadong Song is a very, very high-level fighter. And at the end of the day, at any point when they are on the feet, it's going to be a chance for Yadong Song to get a knockout. This fight is so compelling because Ricky Simón could be dominating 3 out of the 5 rounds. And you could get Ricky Simón 3-0 going into the 4th round. But Yadong Song only needs to touch that chin once. You know, I actually have a little bit of a question about Ricky Simón's chin. Now, I don't want to come at her and say that he's got no chin. You know, I've seen him take some crazy, crazy punishment and stay standing. But I do actually have some reservations over his chin. I don't think it's the best. Maybe I'm underestimating it a little bit. But I do think that his chin can be touched. I think his chin can be cracked. And I think he can be knocked out. Obviously, we've seen him hurt in the UFC before. Obviously, we've seen him knocked out in the UFC before. And although his chin issues haven't really arose for a while, I do think that this could be the fight that happens in. If Yadong Song doesn't hurt him on the feet, doesn't knock him out on the feet, I have a hard time seeing him win this fight. So I have a very hard time seeing Yadong Song win this fight via decision. I just think the relentless pace of Ricky is going to be too much. You know, we've seen Yadong Song tire in the wrestling before. I go back to the Cody Stamann fight. And one thing I will preface this little aspect of the fight by is saying that I think Cody Stamann is a much better technical wrestler than Ricky Simón. You know, I think Ricky Simón is more of an effective wrestler in MMA. I think his pace is way more, his pressure is way more, his cardio is better. He can shoot 15 takedowns. Cody Stamann probably only shoot 6 or 7. But I do think that Cody Stamann is a technically better wrestler. You know, like his chain wrestling is more technical. So instead of just pile driver in opponents up against the cage and constantly taking them down and going aggro, going crazy like Ricky Simon does or Merab Dvalishvili does. Cody Stamann will look for ankle picks. He will look for single legs, transition to a body lock, transition to the back, transition to a trip. He's a lot more technical in the way he approaches the fight. And so, in his fight against Yadong Song, I think this is the reason he was able to consistently get takedowns as the fight wore on, because he was more technical with it. I'm not sure, like it might happen, right? But I'm just not sure that Ricky Simon's bulldozing mentality with the wrestling is going to be that effective against Yadong Song early here, right? Because I think a better way to approach it, if you had the skills to do it, would be to be a little bit more technical in Yadong Song, on Yadong Song with the wrestling, maybe play a little bit more jiu-jitsu when you get him to the ground, and just try to beat him to the next position rather than just pile drive, pace, pressure. Because I think Yadong Song is very tough, he's very strong, and like especially early, he's extremely explosive. And if you're not using technique, if you're just pushing forward, and obviously Ricky has good technique, but you compare it to Cody Stamann, it's not on the level. If you're just using pace and explosivity and pressure like Ricky Simon does, well then when the guy has the same explosivity and the same pressure like Yadong Song, there could be a clash there. And Ricky Simon may not be able to get his wrestling game off early. Now, I actually do side with Ricky Simon overall in this fight to get the win. Now, it's not by a big margin, and I do think the betting odds are fairly accurate. Ricky Simon is about a minus 135 favorite at the moment. I think he's actually been bet down to about minus 130 as I'm making this video. And I think that's fairly accurate. Ricky Simon's slight favorite, just because I do favor him, and the reason I favor him is because, for one, I know he has 5-round cardio. I've never actually seen him go 5 rounds, but I know he has 5-round cardio. I know he has 5-round wrestling and grappling cardio, and that's a big difference, right? Because obviously Yadong Song has great cardio. We've seen it in the Marlon Vera fight. We've seen it in the Corey Sandhagen fight. He wasn't slowing down at all. In fact, he was coming on late in that fight. And he actually defended 14 takedowns in that fight. But Corey Sandhagen was never able to consolidate position. Once Yadong Song gets put on his bum, gets put on his back, I don't think he has the cardio to go 5 rounds. At least, I don't think he's going to completely collapse. He may go 5 rounds. But I don't think he has the cardio to keep up with Ricky Simon if he's consistently put on his bum. So I know that Ricky Simon has the better cardio in this type of fight that he brings. He's built for this type of fight, whereas Yadong Song, he's built more for a striking fight. I know Ricky Simon has the type of game that I've seen defeat Yadong Song before, or at least not defeat, but it went to a decision, it went to a draw, and that was obviously the Cody Stamann and Yadong Song fight. And Yadong Song did lose rounds because of takedowns to Kyler Phillips, and that's what ultimately lost him the fight there. And even in the Corey Sandhagen versus Yadong Song fight, I know that Corey wasn't able to consolidate position with the grappling, but I still feel that the grappling helped him a lot in that fight. It threw Yadong Song off a little bit and probably ultimately lost him the fight. I know the cut lost him the fight, but when you're speaking about the minutes, I think that if that was a striking fight, in my opinion, Yadong Song wins that fight. But I think because it's an MMA fight, I think Corey's clinch game and his grappling definitely swayed that fight a little bit more in his favor, right? So I can point to 3 fights now, 1 draw and 2 losses, where it was the grappling that separated Yadong Song from his opponent in a negative way. And what's Ricky Simon going to do in this fight? Grapple. So that's why I favor Ricky, right? Point blank period. Now, will I be betting on Ricky? I don't know. I haven't made my decision. As I say, I still have some reservations over Ricky's chin. I don't think it's the best chin in the world. I've seen it touched before. I think we may see it touched again. And if anyone's going to touch it, Yadong Song is the guy to do it. So for that reason, I'm not too confident on Ricky Simon money line. I'll see how I feel over the next few days. I haven't made my decision. But one thing I do like in this fight, which I may not play, again, I still haven't made my decision. I haven't made any bets for this fight. But one thing I like, maybe even better than Ricky Simon money line, is the under. I think at the moment, the under 4.5 rounds is the same price as Ricky Simon money line. They were both minus 130 last time I checked. And I think the under 4.5 rounds encapsulates a lot in this fight, right? So obviously we spoke in length about Yadong Song's boxing, pace, pressure, and knockout ability. And then I touched on Ricky Simon's potential bad chin, or at least crackable chin. Right, so if Yadong Song touches him, maybe he gets a knockout. I think he's going to be very live, especially early. And like I said, even in the 4th or 5th rounds, I still think he can land a killer blow. So we're almost encapsulating most of Yadong Song's win equity in the under 4.5 rounds. But then we also are encapsulating any potential win equity from Ricky Simone's finishing ability. And I do think there is some there. If you go back to the Cody Stamann, and I keep speaking about this fight because it's definitely the most stylistically comparative fight between Yadong Song and Ricky Simone this weekend. In his fight with Cody Stamann, Yadong Song, we saw that by the 3rd round, he was getting dominated with the grappling. He looked very tired, and Cody Stamann actually took his back for a second. We saw the last time Ricky Simone took someone's back, it was Jack Shaw. He ended up finishing him into an arm triangle. Got the rear naked choke. Jack Shaw turned into it, and he was able to snatch up the arm triangle. So we know Ricky Simone can finish arm triangles. He loves that submission. He done that against Gaetano Perello. He just done that against Jack Shaw. We know he can finish fighters, especially if they're tired, especially if they're rocked. And so I do think that Ricky Simone has a chance to finish this fight late. Because, as I said, 3rd round in the Cody Stamann fight, he was getting, not only did he have his back taken, but he was getting pounded out. Cody Stamann was landing a lot of shots from top position, and that's something we're not that used to seeing from Cody Stamann. He doesn't do a great job in maintaining mount and landing killer blows. But he was doing that to Yadong Song. If that was a 5-round fight, who knows what would have happened. Now, I do think Yadong Song has grown from that fight, but I still can't get that 3rd round out of my mind, right? It still happened. And it was the reason why Yadong Song didn't actually win that fight, because he would have won it otherwise. So that's how I see the fight playing out, guys. I am favouring Ricky Simone to get the win, but only slightly. And I am a little bit more leaning to the under at the same price as Ricky Simone's money line, because I do think Yadong Song has a good chance of a knockout in this fight. So that's it for the breakdown today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it helps you make some money this weekend. If you want all of my official picks and predictions, you can go to lucrativemmabetting.com. The price I charge is absolute peanuts for the product I deliver. We have earned over 55 units this year, and we're not even halfway through the year. I'm aiming for 150 unit this year. So if you want to jump on board the money train and get all of my official picks and predictions, and if you sign up to the Elite Zone, which is a new membership tier that I've just created on my website, you get access to tons of new content, full card breakdowns for every single fight on the Bellator card, even if there's 2 of them, the UFC card, and the PFL cards. Full card breakdowns for every single fight, picks and predictions, even on fights that we don't have bets on. And we've got loads of other stuff. We've got a DGM parlay section. We've got the best parlay pieces section where I give you good parlay pieces. I think last week I gave out 8 parlay pieces and 6 of them cashed. So there's that section, and there's a lot more as well. There's long shot prop odds section I've just added. This is a lot of work that goes into it every single week. A hell of a lot more work than just picks and predictions. But I think it's very beneficial. We hit a plus 950 last week, which paid for all of the long shot prop bets. And the week before that, we hit a plus 900. We hit Brandon Royval via knockout, plus 950 that was. And we hit Achilles Mota via submission, plus 900. And we actually had Bobby Green via KO in round 1 against Jared Gordon, plus 850, which cashed and then it was taken away. It was the right decision. But yeah, so if you want to sign up, lucrativemmabetting.com is the place to do that. But if not, I wish you luck this weekend. I hope you cash. Let's beat these bookies.